December 21st, 1945. Tokyo, Japan. General Douglas MacArthur sits in his headquarters inside the Dai-ichi Life Insurance Building, the command center from which he governs a defeated empire. An aide enters quietly, carrying a telegram marked urgent from Germany. MacArthur takes it without ceremony, unfolds it, and reads. For a moment, his face, usually carved from stone, theatrical only when he chooses, shows something unguarded. Not shock, not grief, something closer to recognition. He sets the telegram down carefully. General George S. Patton Jr. is dead. He died that morning in an army hospital in Heidelberg, Germany, 12 days after a traffic accident near Mannheim left him paralyzed from the shoulders down. No enemy ambush, no last charge, just a low-speed collision between his staff car and an army truck on a quiet road outside the city. Patton was 60 years old. He had survived the Western Front in World War I, pioneered American armored warfare, led Third Army across Europe in the most aggressive campaign of the war. He was brilliant, volatile, impossible to ignore, one of the most famous generals America had ever produced. And now he was gone. Not on a battlefield, not in uniform with a weapon in his hand. Dead in a hospital bed, paralyzed, helpless, everything Patton had spent his life refusing to be. According to staff officers present, MacArthur reads the telegram in silence. He doesn't call for advisors. He doesn't reach for maps or records. He simply asks to be left alone. When he finally summons his staff back in, he begins dictating a statement. Brief, controlled, deliberate. This is the story of what MacArthur said when Patton died, and why those 11 carefully chosen words revealed far more than any flowery tribute ever could. They revealed how dangerous Patton had become, how fragile hero worship really is, and how even the greatest warriors can outlive their usefulness once the shooting stops. But to understand the weight behind MacArthur's statement, we have to go back. Not to the war that made Patton a legend, but to the man he had become when the war was over and the world no longer needed men like him. George S. Patton Jr. was not a quiet general. He wore ivory-handled revolvers on his hips. He spoke in profanity-laced monologues that could electrify or terrify entire divisions. He believed in reincarnation, in destiny, in the idea that he had been a warrior in every previous life, and he commanded the U.S. Third Army like a man possessed. August 1944, Operation Cobra. Patton's armored columns explode out of Normandy with a speed that shocks both the enemy and Allied command. While other generals measure advance in miles per day, Patton counts in miles per hour. His tanks don't advance, they blitz. In 6 months, Third Army carves through France, crosses the Rhine, drives deep into Germany, covering more ground, faster than any American force in history. Patton doesn't just win battles, he performs them. Tailored uniforms, polished boots, a helmet so shined it can be seen from a distance. He wants his soldiers and the world to see him coming. His speeches become legend. His face appears in newspapers across America. Aggressive, theatrical, utterly convinced that war is his calling. And for a time, he is exactly what America needs. A general who doesn't hesitate, who doesn't wait for orders, who believes that speed and violence can end the war faster and save lives in the long run. Patton is built for war, shaped by it, completed by it. But the very traits that make him indispensable in war will soon make him dangerous in peace. The war in Europe ends in May 1945. Almost immediately, George Patton becomes a problem. The world has shifted. Europe is no longer just a battlefield. It's a political chessboard. Occupation zones must be administered. Former enemies must be governed. Infrastructure rebuilt. New alliances managed. Diplomacy replaces firepower. Men who see the world in absolutes suddenly find themselves in a world of compromise. And generals like Patton, who had been rewarded for seeing everything in black and white, now find themselves out of step with a grey reality. Patton doesn't hide his frustration. He speaks openly, recklessly, about his distrust of Soviet intentions. He compares Nazi Party members to Republicans and Democrats, suggesting they're just politicians who backed the wrong side. He resents denazification, calling it impractical and inefficient. He argues that America should be preparing for the next war, not humiliating Germany for the last one. Washington is not amused. The press, which had celebrated his battlefield exploits, now reports his controversies with equal enthusiasm. What once seemed bold now looks dangerous. What once was praised as straight talk starts to sound like insubordination. In September 1945, Eisenhower relieves Patton of his command of Third Army. Publicly, it's framed as a reassignment. Privately, everyone understands. Patton has become a liability. A man whose instincts, once invaluable, are now incompatible with peacetime governance. A general the military still respects, but no longer trusts with a microphone. By the time 1945 draws to a close, Patton is not being celebrated. He is being managed. December 9, 1945. A quiet road near Mannheim, Germany. Patton is in the back seat of his staff car, heading out for a day of pheasant hunting. The weather is clear, the road is empty, traffic is light. Then, without warning, an army truck turns across their path. The collision is not dramatic. No explosion, no rolling wreckage, no fireball. Just metal crumpling at low speed. The kind of accident that happens every day on every road network in the world. But this one is different. Patton's neck snaps forward violently. His forehead strikes the metal partition. When the vehicle comes to a stop, he is conscious, but cannot move, paralyzed from the shoulders down. He is rushed to a military hospital in Heidelberg. Doctors stabilize him. There is hope, cautious, fragile hope, that he might regain partial movement. Patton remains alert. He jokes with staff. He talks about going back to the States. He makes plans. For 12 days, the world watches and waits. Then, on December 21st, his condition suddenly crashes. A blood clot. Heart failure. By mid-morning, George S. Patton Jr. is dead. The news spreads across the globe within hours. Newspapers run front-page obituaries. Radio broadcasts are interrupted. World leaders issue statements, but beneath the mourning, there's something else. Disbelief. This is not how legends are supposed to end. Not in a hospital bed, not from a traffic accident, not after surviving 2 world wars. The question isn't really how Patton died, it's what it means. Douglas MacArthur understands power in a way Patton never did. By December 1945, MacArthur is not just a general, he is the supreme commander for the Allied powers in Japan. He governs an occupied nation with near absolute authority. He rewrites constitutions, dismantles the Japanese military, oversees land reforms and war crimes trials, reshapes an empire into a new kind of state. Emperors consult him, journalists quote him, Washington needs him, and MacArthur knows exactly how to keep it that way. He is a master of symbolism. Every photograph is staged, The famous image with Emperor Hirohito, MacArthur towering in an open shirt, no tie, hands on hips. Every public statement is calculated. Every appearance reinforces an image, dignity, authority, control. Where Patton is volcanic and blunt, MacArthur is cool and deliberate, quieter, more regal, but just as carefully constructed. He also understands danger. His retreat from the Philippines in 1942 had been humiliating. His ego is legendary. His clashes with Washington are constant. He has survived criticism before. He knows how thin the line is between indispensable hero and dangerous liability. In many ways, MacArthur and Patton are mirror images. Both brilliant, both egotistical, both believers in their own destiny, both larger than life by design. But there is one crucial difference. MacArthur knows when to stay silent. So when the telegram announcing Patton's death arrives, MacArthur does not react impulsively. He pauses, he reflects, and when he finally issues his statement, every word is chosen with surgical precision. He calls his aides back into the room. No pacing, no dramatics. He simply begins dictating, voice steady and controlled. The statement is released within hours. The death of General Patton under such poignant circumstances fills me with deepest regret. That's it. No long tribute, no list of campaigns and medals, no fiery praise for a fallen warrior. Just one carefully measured sentence that acknowledges Patton's death and stops. Notice what MacArthur doesn't say. He doesn't call Patton a hero. He doesn't mention Third Army, the dash across France, the relief of Bastogne, or the armored drive into Germany. He doesn't use words like courageous, brilliant, irreplaceable. Instead, he focuses on the circumstances, the manner of death, the timing, the way it all ended. Under such poignant circumstances, not tragic, not glorious, not honorable, poignant. The statement lands in military and press circles with weight. Officers feel the restraint. Journalists sense the unsaid. It is respectful, but distant, formal, controlled. MacArthur has given Patton exactly what protocol demands, and nothing more. Some interpret it as appropriate military dignity. Others feel the coolness underneath. Almost everyone agrees on one thing. The statement raises more questions than it answers. Because the real meaning isn't on the surface, it's buried in one word: regret. In military language, regret carries a specific weight. It is not the same as honor, pride, admiration, or respect. Regret implies something lost unnecessarily, something mishandled, something that ended the wrong way. When a general expresses regret, he isn't celebrating. He is acknowledging a failure. Not necessarily his own, but a failure somewhere in the system. MacArthur doesn't say he regrets Patton's passing. He says Patton's death fills him with deepest regret because of the poignant circumstances. He doesn't regret that Patton died. He regrets how and when Patton died. Because Patton didn't just die in a car crash. He died at the exact moment when the world had stopped needing him. When his aggression had turned from asset to liability. When his instincts, once indispensable, had become politically radioactive. Patton survived the war, but he couldn't survive the peace. And that is the tragedy MacArthur recognizes. Not the accident itself, but what it symbolizes. A warrior built exclusively for conflict, stranded in a world that no longer has a place for him. The poignant circumstances aren't only paralysis and a hospital bed. They're timing. They're about a man who outlived his usefulness to the nation that made him a hero. MacArthur understands this because he is walking the same tightrope. Controversial. outspoken, convinced of his own destiny. One misstep, one political mistake, and admiration could become condemnation overnight. In acknowledging Patton's tragedy, MacArthur is quietly acknowledging his own risk. This Patton doesn't belong only to Patton. History is full of warriors who survived their battlefields, only to be undone by the peace that follows. Men shaped by crisis, elevated by conflict, celebrated for qualities that become suspect once the emergency ends. Societies need these men desperately during war. Their aggression becomes necessary. Their single-minded focus becomes strategy. Their refusal to compromise becomes strength. But when the fighting stops, those qualities don't vanish. The warrior can't just flip a switch. He can't unlearn the instinct to react quickly and decisively when he senses danger. He can't suddenly become diplomatic, cautious, politically careful, because those traits would have gotten him killed in combat. So he speaks too bluntly, acts too decisively, sees threats where others see negotiations. And slowly, inevitably, he becomes a problem. The tragedy isn't that he fails, it's that he succeeds too completely at being exactly what he was asked to be. Then the world moves on without him. Patton is exceptional in many ways, but in this he is universal. He stands in for every soldier who comes home to find that the skills that made him a hero make him unemployable in peace. Every crisis leader whose decisiveness, once praised, is now called recklessness. MacArthur, with surgical precision, captures that entire tragedy in those 11 supposed simple words. And that's why they refuse to fade. MacArthur's statement endures because it refuses to offer comfort. It doesn't tell us Patton was right. It doesn't tell us he was wrong. It doesn't clean up the contradictions. It simply says something was lost. It didn't have to be lost that way, and we should sit with that. Patton's legacy remains complicated. He was brilliant and reckless, visionary and obstinate, a man who likely saved lives through speed and aggression, and who endangered his own career through pride and poor judgment. But MacArthur's 11 words weren't really about Patton's personal flaws. They were about a system that builds heroes for specific purposes, worships them when they're needed, and then struggles with what to do when those purposes end. Nations know how to build warriors. They know how to celebrate them, deploy them, rely on them when survival is at stake. They've never been very good at letting them live once the emergency is over. MacArthur understands that truth in December 1945. And in one restrained sentence, he warns history. The way we treat our heroes when the fighting ends says more about us than it does about them. Patton survived 2 world wars. He couldn't survive peace. History doesn't just remember battles. It remembers how we treat the people we ask to fight them. Patton lived that truth. MacArthur understood it. And in just 11 words, history was warned. If you want more deep dives like this, into the moments and sentences where wars end but consequences don't, subscribe to Last Stand History and hit the notification bell. Because sometimes the most important battles are fought in silence after the shooting stops.